I'm Pastor Paul Holt with a Bible Factor Update. The sin of national debt and the punishment of work. How sin and judgment are working together to destroy our nation. There is a cancer in the United States of America, and it is called the national debt. As we approach $20 trillion, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin has called on Congress to raise the United States debt limit at the first opportunity. In a letter to congressional leaders dated Wednesday, Mnuchin said that the Treasury will stop issuing certain state and local securities on March 15th, when the most recent suspension of the debt limit expires. Mnuchin said that the Treasury will likely start to take extraordinary measures on the next day when the U.S. will be at its statutory limit to prevent a default. As many of these folks have said, and as Mnuchin himself said during his confirmation, that he was going to honor the full faith and credit of our outstanding debt, and that it is a critical commitment. This is what you hear them say all the time. The fact that our debt is critical, that it needs to be raised. We need the ability to borrow more money. Now, certainly there needs to be some wiggle room as we attempt to deal with the debt. But the fact is that at this point, Congress is unwilling to do any real work on controlling itself. The same is true at the state level, as New Mexico has decided to add even more taxes in order to deal with its budget shortfall. You see, they didn't plan it out well, and they still want to spend tons of cash on entitlements. And the fact is that, well, those that are working are being punished. Like I earn my paycheck. When I earn my paycheck, I have taxes taken out both at the national level and at the state level. I see both those line items on my pay stub. And the state gets to take money when I earn it. But the state also takes money. Now they're wanting to tax my purchases on Amazon at 7%. Now, here's the thing. I don't care how they want. I understand that we need to pay for certain things that the state does, such as we want roads and bridges, and we want them to keep our infrastructure up. Problem is they don't. Have you driven on New Mexico roads lately? The fact is that we're not keeping up our infrastructure. We're not spending the money where it needs to go. Instead, we're spending the money on people who, are living without good judgment. They aren't taking the time to make good decisions. They aren't thinking it through, as they have many children out of wedlock. And, I think that we need to tackle this as a church and as a people more often. The fact that immorality and sin is breeding this problem literally as we continue to add to our population, but not in a responsible way. While it is important for us to reproduce, we should reproduce properly so that the children that are brought into this world have a mother and father that are willing to work and are willing to support their children. And the fact is that we don't have that happening, as half of New Mexico's population is on Medicaid. Half of our children are on Medicaid. Now, the debt is outrageous. Under President Obama, we added $6.5 trillion. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't fathom that much money. Now, these numbers are old. That's from Obama's first term. He's actually doubled that and outspent the 43 presidents that came before him. Now, to understand this correctly, President Obama increased our spending so much and borrowed so much more money that under President Bush, our debt was 68% of our gross domestic product. Now, our gross domestic product is less than our debt. We have borrowed 106% of our GDP. The fact is that we keep kicking the debt down the road, and now it's gotten too difficult to deal with because Obama not only didn't pay down the debt or balance any budgets, but he in fact borrowed more money than any other president before him, to the point that we're actually in danger as a nation. I mean, $20 trillion. That's an amazing amount of money. Well, look, we can certainly say that Jesus taught us that we should render unto Caesar the things which be Caesar's, and unto God the things which be God's. Okay, sure, the government has a right to tax us. But should we get punished for the crime of work? Again, I want to go back to my New Mexico example. I get taxed when I earn it. I get taxed when I spend it. So really, work is the only crime that you get punished more than once for. There's no double jeopardy when it comes to the punishment you get for working. They tax me when I earn it, and they tax me when I spend it. That means I'm getting taxed at least twice. I know I'm getting taxed even more than that. And they want to tax sodas. They want to tax everything. And the fact is that this is a symptom of a much larger problem. According to Deuteronomy 28, and I've talked about this before, but if you read all of Deuteronomy 28, you see the blessings and the curses of a nation that has called itself a nation that belongs to the Lord and then rejects biblical principles. Part of the curse found in verses 43 through 44 is that the sojourner, in other words, the alien, who is among you shall rise higher and higher above you, and you shall come down lower and lower. He shall lend to you, and you shall not lend to him. He shall be the head, and you shall be the tail. A nation that gives itself over to sin is a nation that will borrow instead of lend, and will see its wealth and riches eaten up by those from outside. We see in verses 28 through 29 of Deuteronomy 28 that the Lord will strike you with madness. This is called progressivism or liberalism. And blindness. You won't be able to see your problems. And confusion of mind. And you shall grope at noonday. That's what we're trying to do now, trying to figure out how exactly do we keep spending so much money and not reduce any of our spending at all and take from those that have produced and have worked hard for what they have. And it says that you shall not prosper in your ways, and you shall be only oppressed and robbed continually, and there shall be no one to help you. Now this can't apply to the individual, but it's really focused on the nation. And that's the problem that we have, is that as a nation, we have become borrowers instead of lenders. We have allowed, through our sin, we've allowed ourselves to become blind. We've developed a madness called godlessness, humanism, whatever label you want to give it. It's those that reject God and want bigger government, and they're blind to the problems of bigger government. And we need to understand this correctly if we're ever going to solve it, because New Mexico isn't going to solve its problems with more oil revenue. It's not going to solve its problems by taxing your Amazon purchases. They tax so much, but we are still the poorest, one of the poorest states in the union, usually in the bottom three. There's a reason for that. There's a reason that we have arrived at this point. I'm Pastor Paul Holt with a Bible Factor update, and you can find me at thebiblefactor.com.